Hi everybody, it's Thorn. You know what we really miss since the pandemic is awkward videos of me in my car sitting in a parking lot. It's been a while since we've had one of these. So here I am in a parking lot, out just running some errands. Got my mask over here, staying away from people, so trying to be as safe as possible. La la la. Anyway, somebody said something interesting to me last week, and I've been kind of mulling it over in my head, and as is my way, when I'm mulling something over in my head, why not just share everything to thousands of people on the internet, right? So take that for what you will. Anyway, this friend of mine said to me that one of the reasons why they appreciated my work kind of over the years was that I never stopped identifying as Wiccan, even though kind of the general culture in witchcraft communities has shifted. Wicca is very much like not the cool kid in the cafeteria anymore for all kinds of reasons, some of them a lot better than others. But through it all, here I am, a Wiccan on the internet, when it is not cool to be so. And at first I thought that was very funny. And I get what they're saying, because that's definitely something that you can point to. I think not just now, but like over the decades. I mean, I can look at favorite authors over the years who've written books in multiple traditions. I can think of people in my life who I've worked with magically who, you know, they've changed, like, and most of the time those kinds of changes happen because of personal developments, I think. I mean, I like to give people the benefit of the doubt, and I think if we're really doing the work, as occultists, as magicians, as witches, I think that it's inevitable that we will grow and develop and change our minds. And often that means taking on new hats, right? Maybe joining new traditions, maybe leaving traditions, forging things on our own that are totally new. I think all of that stuff is normal and healthy. But it did leave me with the question of, well, like, why am I still Wiccan, right? And I don't mean to be glib, but I mean, I think that's a question that's worth addressing, because I definitely get flack for it. And I think, and I'm not saying that, like, you know, like that's always unjustified or people are just like shitting on Wicca for no reason or whatever. I think that there's a lot of important, valid critique that's out there right now that needs to be addressed. And I'll touch on a couple of those things here, I hope. But I thought I would just kind of share some of my feelings. So the first thing that comes to mind, and this is purely anecdotal, right? I don't have any charts for you. I'm not a sociologist, but just kind of speaking from my own experience. One thing that I think is different about me as a witch, and I'm using that word consciously as opposed to pagan right here, so please hear that, that I think is maybe more unusual than I thought it was even like a couple of years ago. And I think maybe something that some of us take for granted, but maybe is actually not so common, is I'm a theist. Like, I am a religious person who is also a devotee of very specific gods. And those gods are Wiccan. In my tradition, we work with specific gods. I know kind of the popular attitude about Wicca is that, like, Wiccans just take whatever god they feel like it and they plug it into their rituals. And there are absolutely types of Wicca that are flexible in their attitudes about worship and working with deities and what deities are and what it's okay or not okay to do with them in ritual. But my particular tradition, my background, my training, my experience, I am a priestess of two very specific gods that are unique to my tradition, or at least unique to a body of traditions within the same what is this? This is not an umbrella. I don't know what word I want. Within the same sort of universe, okay? And so to me, that is ultimately what makes me Wiccan. It's not the type of ritual I do. It's not, I mean, I don't know, like it's complicated, right? But it's not a question for me of just like setting down superficial things like how I do ritual or what kind of language I use. It's really about my relationship with those gods. And through my development as a witch, my relationship with those gods has only strengthened and deepened. I feel like my central mission as a witch has been pursuing the gods. And my ideas about who they are and how I interact with them and what that means, all that stuff changes over the years, okay? But the pursuit is the same. And that to me is what makes me Wiccan. And that doesn't change if I have some disagreement with something within my tradition or don't want to identify with, I don't know, I'm making all this stuff up, right? I mean, like, I don't actually have these things going on, but like if I don't want to associate with other kinds of Wiccans, or if I have some kind of objection to something within my tradition or somebody else's tradition of Wicca, whatever, like all of that stuff is kind of secondary to the pursuit of my relationship with the gods. So like that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm Wiccan, kind of regardless of what else is going on. So that's kind of the big central thing. Other things, and I think this next point kind of addresses the critiques that are, I guess, at the fore of a lot of people's minds when they think about Wicca. And these are the critiques that involve cultural appropriation, gender essentialism, racism, right? Like there are lots of really important and valid critiques that are being directed very heavily at Wicca. And I think some of those critiques are better than others, but all of them require a lot of self-reflection, digging. They require a lot of, I think, intense exploratory conversations, both with ourselves and with other people. And I hope that increasingly we're having those conversations. But the thing to me that makes me a little worried about that is that what I'm seeing my fellow white people do, my fellow white, heterosexual, cisgender, etc., like my fellow people in positions of privilege, what I'm seeing us doing is we go, okay, Wicca has all these troubles, let's dump Wicca in the garbage, and let's say that we're now other kinds of witches. But we take all of those same problems with us, right? When we point to Wicca as the problem itself inherently, I think we're giving ourselves a pass to not be reflective on other kinds of witchcraft. And frankly, I see the same problems in just about every other kind of contemporary witchcraft that's popular right now. It's not just Wiccans, right, who are racists or who are, appropriating indigenous traditions, who are participating in gender essentialism, who are homophobic. I see these things in other kinds of witchcrafts as well. And so I want to resist what I see as this urge to just kind of dump it all on Wicca and then assume that we're over it when we stop identifying as Wiccan. I think that's a problem. So I think that for me, those conversations have to happen from within Wicca, like amongst my coven, amongst my tradition mates. Like those are things that we get to wrestle with because this is where we live. And if we want to change those things, if we want to make an inclusive tradition, if we want to be better, then we have to sit here and wrestle with it and be better instead of just calling ourselves non-Wiccan or calling ourselves traditional witches or calling ourselves whatever, and then just carrying the same shit and pretending that we left it all with our Book of Shadows or whatever. And that's what I see happening. I think that some of the critique is unfair, not because it's not present, but because we're excluding other kinds of witchcraft that I think also need to be critiqued, if that makes sense. I think that it's too tempting for white people, for people in positions of privilege, to just go, oh, well, Wicca is the thing that needs to be dumped. And that gives us an excuse to not look at where else these exact same problems are present. So that's another reason, right? Like, I think it would be convenient to just stop identifying a particular way to avoid critique instead of wrestling with it head on. And that's an ongoing process, okay? And it's an imperfect process, but it's one that's important to me and I hope is important to an increasing number of us. So there's that. I don't know what else. Like, I guess the last thing, I don't want to keep you here for 20 minutes, although I'm not actually keeping you here, right? You're adults. You can click away and do whatever you want, you autonomous people, you. But I think that Wicca is really beautiful. Like, I think that there's a depth to Wicca that people often miss because they're only approaching it from the shelves of big chain bookstores. You know, like, if your only consideration of Wicca happened in 2002 when you read Scott Cunningham for the first time, then I would venture to say that you don't actually know very much about Wicca. And I don't mean that to be like dismissive or but I think that people think they know a lot more than they actually do. And there are all kinds of Wicca out there. There's many kinds of Wiccans, and we don't all like each other. We disagree about Wicca and I try to be like as broad and inclusive as possible because I think that's the most useful and fruitful perspective. But a lot of the times when I hear people talking about the deficiencies of Wicca, they're speaking from a place that I don't feel is very well informed or not informed by the most current work. I mean, we're very different than we were in the 60s, 70s, in the 90s, in the early 2000s. Like, I feel like myself and many of the other priests, priestesses, I think that we're doing a lot of work that just doesn't make it into kind of mainstream pagan media because it's not interesting or it's not sexy or it's not the right people writing the blogs, right, or the books. I think a lot of people, they look at Buckland, they look at Cunningham, they look at Gardner, maybe. Usually people just pretend to look at Gardner, right? They don't actually read Gardner. But everybody read Cunningham when they were 16 and they think that they're experts on Wicca, and then I think they don't allow for the possibility that there might be stuff out there that they don't know. I actually wrote a whole book about that in 2018, right? So, anyway, the religion speaks to me in a really profound way, and I think that that's a thing that it can do if you pursue it, right? And that's not to say that it's right for everybody. I know it's not. But I think people shortchange it because of dated books and dated views. I think people kind of recycle opinions that they hear. I see a lot of newcomers come to me and they ask for recommendations on non-Wiccan books. They don't want to deal with Wicca. And it's because they're recycling things that they've heard from other people online. It's not that they have ever read some of these materials or experienced these traditions firsthand. It's that they've been told preemptively that they shouldn't. And like, that means that people are going to miss things. So anyway, I don't think that Wicca is better than other kinds of witchcraft, and it absolutely has its problems that need to be addressed. I hope that it will look different in many ways than it does now, with a new generation of leaders and writers. I mean, a lot of the coven leaders that I know right now are, they're millennials, they're Gen Xers, some of them are younger millennials, and they're very different than, I think, the portrayal of Wicca that existed even 10 years ago. So that's why I'm still here. I hope you all are well and staying safe, and I will see you next time.